Hi, I'm Doug Padgett with Vote Common Good. At Vote Common Good, we encourage people of faith to bring about a change on Election Day by making the common good their voting criteria, and by deepening into faith, hope, and love to stop the re-election of Donald Trump. We've been talking with faith voters all across the country who did vote for Donald Trump in 2016, but won't be voting for him in 2020. Here are a few of their stories. You can hear their entire interviews and share your story at votecommongood.com.
Lifelong Republican till about 4 months ago. I do believe in balance in all things. And I after 8 years of Obama as a businessman, I felt like I was worried that Hillary might take us to more anti-business stuff. And so I just said, let's give this business guy a shot. And I also thought that he would raise himself into the level of the office, that he'd kind of put down the childish ways. And obviously I was just terribly wrong on that. He didn't change at all. In fact, he got more petty, which was a shame. The thing that was a slap in the face to me, as I've started to care more for the environment, and I don't believe business and environmental goals are mutually exclusive, is when he appointed an ex-coal lobbyist to head the EPA. That was just, it's like you're not even trying, you know. I want the person who's heading the EPA to care about the environment. And so between that, and then here's the big one. I mentioned how I am no longer a Republican. It's actually not because of Trump. So one of my bigger issues is fiscal responsibility. And I was one of those people that was mad at the spending under the Obama administration and the deficits that we racked up. Well, so I voted for a Republican, right? And I'm telling you, some people don't want to realize it or recognize it, but Trump and the Republicans have eclipsed the spending of the previous administration. Right. So that's why I would tell you, Doug, that I am a conservative still, but I unregistered as a Republican because they're no longer conservative. And so the finances, the environment, those were two of the major reasons that I won't vote for Trump again. I will say this, you know, he signed that bipartisan prison reform bill. That was terrific. It was great for people of color who are disproportionately affected with our prison system. I know you might kind of do this to this, but I don't think the judges he appointed were bad either. I know it was chaotic, the nominations and all that, but I think all in all, I like typically having balance on our courts as well. And so, but all that being said, Doug, I am voting for someone with what I believe to have current brain degeneration for president. Because
you're speaking of Donald Trump.
No, I'm speaking of
Biden. I mean, what are the chances we have two people that people can make the argument that there's brain degeneration?
The thing is, I think that Donald Trump is actually incredibly sharp, but I don't think he's smart. I think Joe Biden is smart and he has incredible experience, but he is no longer sharp. Now, I think the reason why I'll still vote for him is because I think he will appoint a great cabinet that'll do a great job, and that one person can't run this country. So I think he's going to put good people in, and that's why he's got my vote. It's not just, well, it's mostly a not Trump, but I actually see, like, for instance, Joe Biden actually won me over because we're here in Arizona and John McCain died this past year, and or maybe just over a year ago. And Joe Biden, he gave a eulogy there, and it was amazing. It was nonpartisan. It was fun. He just talked about his experience in politics, and I love his vibe and how he does it.
Hey, so let me do a little thought experiment with you. Maybe you've done plenty of this. If you were back in 2016 and Joe Biden had been the nominee, would you have felt more comfortable not voting for Donald Trump at that time? Or did you feel like, look, I just was looking for a bigger shift away from 8 years of one approach and wanted to try another approach? Like, was it candidate specific on the Democratic side, or have you thought much about that?
You know, I think I still probably would have voted Trump just because of that balance, that the pendulum that our country is. And I don't know that it's a great system, but we seem to be in this whiplash thing. And I'll tell you, the Democratic Socialists of America have grown 10x since Donald Trump was inaugurated. And personally, I think there are a lot of great people there, but I don't share a whole lot of values with them. And I think that's just a demonstration of how, because he's been so polarizing, it's created a very, very far, what I'd call left movement as well. And so I don't think it's all good, but I think that's just the nature of our country. So, but back in 2016, I was, so I'm an entrepreneur, and we do have some taxes and taxation here in Arizona that at times have caused me to wonder if I should shutter one of my businesses. And so I really do think that it's our money. I do believe in lower taxes, but we have to take care of the things in our country that taxes go towards. So at that point, I don't think I could have voted for a Democrat for a 12th year, or a third term.
Yeah. Well, do you remember a moment, like you said 4 months ago, you said, I'm no longer going to be a Republican or consider myself that. And maybe, I don't know what Arizona does. You have to officially change your registration or not.
You have to officially change it. So Colleen and I are officially independents.
So you had to go fill out a form and get off that mailing list, I guess. Do you recognize a point or a series of points from election day of November 8th, 2016, inauguration day, January 20th, 2017, until you said, I just can't support him any longer? Do you remember those days pretty well? Do you mark them with moments that were striking for you?
Because for me, the number one issue is the deficit spending, and what I think is just putting that debt burden on our generations to come. It wasn't one moment. The first budget that he signed, he said, I don't like it, but I won't do it again. I'll do it this time, but not again. And then it just got worse and worse. And this is all pre-pandemic. I understand the spending we're doing now is more on it's a rescue thing and it's bipartisan, but I'm talking about before that, just general accounting. So honestly, it wasn't a single moment. The Iran conflict got me super concerned. That could have been a moment. And when I remember the day that the news came in, because the Iranians had fired missiles at our bases, and I thought, this is it. Trump will never back down. He's just a pig and it's going to be bad. And I remember he said, we are satisfied with the response and we have no reason to escalate. And so to me, Doug, of all the things that, worst case scenario, he doesn't seem to be looking to go start nuclear war. So I've been actually really happy with that.
Yeah.
And so that was pleasing, but generally it's just been little, pieces of hay and straw on the pile that just eventually I couldn't do anymore. It wasn't one thing. It wasn't the way he talked to one journalist. It was just, it's over and over and over. And the most recent thing where former President Bush, he put the video out to talk about how Americans can come together and unify during these hard times. And even that, Trump was threatened and said, where were you when I was getting impeached to talk? He made it about himself, and he lost the opportunity of a leader to shine and to bring us together. And so it wasn't one thing, it was a million.
Yeah. One of the things that we're constantly saying in the work that we do is we're not trying to ask Republicans to stop being Republicans. We just don't want them to vote for this guy this time. And we're not asking Republicans to become Democrats, but they don't have to move into the House, but maybe just rent it as an Airbnb for from Monday night into Tuesday.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think everybody has to answer for themselves. Why am I a Democrat or why am I a Republican? And for me, one of those things was the financial thing. And I think that was apart from Donald Trump.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that was really pushed by, well, I don't know if for you it's sort of just the spending side or the tax cut, but all of that was brought about by Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell and people who had for my lifetime, had been arguing a position of fiscal responsibility and always asked the question, how are you going to pay for it? And
Right.
kind of mocked trickle-down economics in their own way, right? They said, like, yeah, that doesn't really work to just, think that you're going to simply build the economy to pay for everything that the federal
Yeah.
government
And
has debt for. Then they
well,
just went
right.
off and did it and have continued to brag about it till this very morning. Like just this morning, they were still bragging that the thing they've done was so helpful and so right. I've just sort of lost track of who's standing for what any longer.
Well, as you know, Doug, I mean, I do follow the numbers, and tax revenues, despite the cuts, have still been record setting. So an economist could make the case that lower taxes can still yield a higher net revenue.
Mhm.
And so we've seen that. So I feel like the intake, the income of the government has been still good. It's the spending that's gotten out of control.
Right.
But hey, look, Paul Ryan decided to go home, and he quit playing the game.
Sure did. Yeah, he made that bet, and then and didn't have to be the one that was living with it. We've sort of colloquially been referring to these conversations as hindsight 2020 conversations, right?
Right.
I like that phrase that hindsight's always 2020, and in 2020 there's a chance for all of us, because it's a re-election moment, to vote with a little hindsight and to say, will I do again what I did the last time? And so hey, thanks a lot for being willing to share your story. How does that feel now? I mean, I know you're in a world, partly because, I know Shalene and others, and there's just a lot of social pressure and media pressure to where people say stuff like, how in God's name could anyone vote for Donald Trump? Or, right? Like that is a refrain that I hear all the time, just serious dismay about why someone would have ever voted for him in 2020 or in 2016 or why they would in 2020.
Yeah.
How does that strike you? I don't know if you hear those kinds of things, but if you do, how does that strike you when you hear that from people, as if only some sort of a evil or fool could have ever voted for Trump in 2020 or in 2019?
A lot of times people are a lot more bold behind their computer screen. And so they can post something like that or say something, and they get nasty, and you get nasty in the comments. But if I talk to somebody like you, as close to face as this can be, you can hear my heart. You can hear my thoughts on here's why I voted that way. And all of a sudden they're like, well, we're very different, but appreciate you sharing. No one's a jerk typically in person when you're having a conversation, a respectful conversation. Online, people get nasty, and so like I'm a 9 on the Enneagram, right?
Oh, yeah.
Big on this, and so that part of me is I love to bring balance, and so I'll be on Facebook, and I'll be starting fires on the far right, and then I'll be starting fires on the far left, because
You're a serial arsonist.
Yeah, I am. And I don't know why I do that to myself. It's not very fun,
Right.
but I feel like all sides have some good.
Yeah.
All sides, and I'm not saying one side has less good. In this case, I'm going to make a vote because I think it's going to be a better vote.
Right.
But I'm just saying we should look at all these. Everybody has their own issues, and so.
And it's really something. One of the things I just am most sad about in this age, and I know we've been in a polarized political environment for a long time, but I ran for the Minnesota State Legislature here, and my idea, I was running as a Democrat, but with what I refer to as an indie Democrat spirit, right? Because independents, Democrats, Republicans, they all have a point, right? They have a thing that they contribute to the world, and when you can take the best of that spirit and bring it to bear and to operationalize it in our collective life through the government, you would think we're better off. And I don't think it would be overstatement to say all of this was Donald Trump's fault, but I think he's a uniquely divisive person. I think he amplifies the difficulty that exists in our political and social systems, and just seemingly makes everything feel more dangerous, more technicolor, and just more intense and worse, frankly. And I just long for the day that Republicans don't feel like they're in a hostage situation with super crazies, and religious and social conservatives and others, when Democrats could actually say it's reasonable to say you can negotiate with Republicans and that doesn't mean that you don't have any backbone, where independents don't have to feel like they have to say that every Democrat and Republican that exists in the world is some sort of a corporate sellout. Like, we've just gotten to a point at which our understanding of one another has devolved to a point, and whether or not Donald Trump's removal from the political system by his defeat will solve for all of that, I think it will serve as the watershed moment where people will say, okay, things need to be different now, because we never want that to happen again. Did you have any of those similar sentiments, or do you think about the just overall political system in any particular way?
Yeah, well, it's hard to think outside of Trump because he's such a huge personality. And like you said, he has this uniquely terrible gifting to actually bring the whole thing down. So when he's gone, yeah, I think that'll move the needle. But let's say that, God forbid, there's a vacancy on the Supreme Court in the next few months. You think the Democrats are going to want to confirm that person after the Republicans didn't confirm Obama's attempt at his pick? So these scars stay, and I don't think it's all Trump there, but I sure hope that there's more level-headedness and respect, but I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I'm not either. I really think the future is what people are going to make out of it, and I'm not sure who those people are going to be, because it runs deep.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say I voted for my first Democrat already here in the state for Kirsten Sinema, one of our senators.
Yeah,
we actually have 2 female senators, which is pretty cool.
Pretty great. How did that feel, voting for a Democrat when you walked out of that voting booth?
Felt liberating.
Really?
But yeah, for sure, felt liberating. But all I had to do was watch one debate, and I just saw how the 2 carried themselves. And one was just almost erratic and maniacal and self-conscious and defensive, and the other was thoughtful and articulate and like I said, level-headed. And I was like, well, this is easy. And yeah. Guess what? Kirsten Sinema has proven to be an independent thinker.
Totally.
In Washington. She was like one of the only ones on the Democratic side clapping during something that Trump said. And I can't watch the State of the Union anyway, but I could see that she said, no, this thing was good. Yeah. And I can clap for it. And so she's been pretty impressive.
Well, you're in a unique situation there in Arizona where Sinema ran against McSally, beat McSally, the one you're talking about. And then McSally is later appointed to be that senator to replace McCain. Do I have that right?
That's exactly right.
So now you have both the people you had to choose between voting for, somehow both became your senators. And if that's not sort of just a little snapshot of the quirky moment that we're in this country, that people feel like no matter who I vote for, that other person is still going to become the representative.
They can say that that's any kind of a trend or a pattern.
No, but it's just like if anything was going to happen in 2018 and 2019, it was that, right? It was.
Well,
that.
And now, she's got to win her reelection on her own now.
And that's in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey Sam, thanks so much for your honesty, for your clarity of thought. It's super great to hear.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it. Thanks for giving me a chance.
Yeah, for sure.